presented.
So move.
O'Brien,
I'll second it.
second Cap. Roll call.
Who was the first?
Bill. March.
Bill.
O'Brien, I'm sorry.
Member Alfonso,
Abstain.
member Bransky,
Yes.
member Cap,
Yes.
member Ryan,
Yes.
member Johnson,
Yes.
member Castaneda,
Abstain, I wasn't.
Chairman Survega.
I'll abstain. I was not here.
We have. enough.
Thank you, sir. All right, how about the minutes from our meeting on March 28th? Anybody want to make any changes on those? No? All right, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, Alfonso and Cap. Roll call, please.
Sure, member Alfonso,
Yes.
member Bransky,
Yes.
member Cap,
Yes.
member O'Brien,
Abstain.
member Johnson,
Abstain.
member Castaneda,
Yes.
Chair Survega.
Yes.
We have a quorum, or we have there's enough votes.
But you want to continue.
Was approved.
Okay. All right, so tonight we're gonna have a presentation about the transit-oriented
We have one other item.
development plan.
We have one other item on the agenda first. The
Oh, the re-subdivision.
re-subdivision,
Yep.
plat, approval of the plat. Oh, yeah, we have public comments first too, on any items not on the agenda.
Yeah,
Sure.
let's do public comments first about the re-subdivision of the old Brunswick bowling alley on 183rd Street. Anybody have any questions or comments about that? No? Okay. Board members?
At the last meeting, Mr. Chairman, I expressed my concern. In my experience, I'm more accustomed to approving the plat when we have a chance to look at plans. So I certainly know what I'm going to do tonight.
Okay.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
We are re-subdividing this in order to sell the parcels to separate developers. And so it wouldn't really, they wouldn't be able to give you and develop their plans until they purchase the property, or the village has a purchase and sale agreement with them. So at this time, we have to subdivide it or they have to subdivide it in order for the village to convey that to them, but they can't yet have their plans ready because it's not their property, so it's kind of a.
I mean, I can understand what you're saying, Angela, but I don't see that that's reasonable.
Okay.
Reasons.
So if we approve the plans tonight, we're still gonna see them again,
Yes, you're not approving plans, just the subdivision of land.
just a subdivision. Okay.
No plans.
Right, kind of just briefly referencing last week's hearing item on the Upham subdivision. There's you'll see the full site plan review process when it is prepared. As Angela mentioned, the individual parcels are subdivided and are sold off, and those development plans will have to come in and be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission as they're brought up. So To respond to member Cap's note, oftentimes you do see, like, say with a residential subdivision or a new office park or something like that, yes, there's a preliminary development plan that subdivision is being based off of. There are general development, kind of goals with the subdivision that's laid out there, and there's a reason why the cross access easements are where they are, and things of that nature. But the again, we're not at that stage, and so
Well, I pointed out last time that I was, to start with, curious, but certainly questioning the need for having an easement that bisects the northeast corner of the one of the lots at the northeast corner of this proposed re-subdivision, and I just offered the suggestion, again, based on the experience, that surely any future plan could be better and more flexibly designed if this easement were not perfectly in the middle, but at a side. And I don't know if it was you, Noah, or in a subsequent conversation I might have had with another staff member, they were pointing out, oh, well, it's probably for a sanitary sewer for the proposed building. Well, that presupposes that somebody has some sort of plan. And my point still stands. I personally would be more comfortable looking at plans before we review this, and I'm just using this as an example of we're in a rush to approve this plat, and I personally I just don't see the wisdom of bisecting a re-subdivided lot with an easement when it could be aligned along one of the property lines.
I do believe that that's an existing easement, and I will tell you, having talked to the developer, there is no plan yet for that parcel. We did preliminarily see a parcel that, a plan where the building was not on that easement, because it does exist. Now, if they want to move it for a different plan, I guess that would be a future site plan review, but as it is, they're not moving it at this time.
Picture's worth 1,000 words, and
Right.
so I've expressed my opinion, and
So we're just strictly approving the re-subdivision. Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments about re-subdivision? If not, can I have a motion to approve? So moved. Mr. Johnson,
yes.
do we have a second?
Why are we back here tonight on this if there was nothing?
Because the process in our code of ordinances calls for a preliminary review and then a final review. The reason for the preliminary review is if there was issues that the Planning and Zoning Commission had with the plat that they wanted the board to review. But at the last meeting, no issues were identified. So we're carrying it forward.
Then I will second.
You'll second, okay. Second by member Alfonso. Roll call?
Alfonso,
Yes.
Bransky,
Yes.
Hack,
No.
O'Brien,
Abstain.
Johnson,
Yes.
Castaneda,
Yes.
Chairman Zerzaga.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. So next is our approval for the transit oriented development plan, correct? Yes. We're gonna have a presentation tonight about the transit oriented development plan for the downtown area. We've got a group that's going to come up here and explain it to us. We're setting a 9 o'clock curfew. After the presentation, we're gonna open it up to the audience. We're gonna ask you to state your name and address, and we're gonna swear you in as all testimony is taken under oath. Okay, so if anybody has any questions or comments about the plan, we're more than welcome to hear your questions. Ladies and gentlemen.
Great, thank you very much.
You want to state your name and address, please? for the
My name
record?
is Fiona Kennedy. My address is 1805 West Superior Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60622.
Okay, and your partner?
Hi, my name is Kelsey. My address is 724 Sherwood, LaGrange Park, Illinois.
What was the first name?
Kelsey, last name is Lavore.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And the gentleman, he's not gonna say it, he's just taking notes. Hmm.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Waltz. I'm a senior planner with RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority. My address is 858 West Lawrence Avenue, Apartment 1, Chicago, Illinois, 60640.
Okay, if you all want to raise your right hand and swear the testimony you're gonna give and be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great, well, thank you for having us tonight. I'm Fiona Kennedy, as I said, an associate with Muse Community Design, joined with my colleague Kelsey. And we have both had the honor to work on
Does
the
that
village.
speaker system work?
Is this
Can you
working?
hear? Can you hear okay?
You good back there? Let me know.
Okay, okay.
Cool, thank you. We've both had the honor to work on the Village of Homewood Transit-Oriented Development Plan for the past year. Thank you all for your time and dedication to this planning process. We know a lot of you have already submitted comments to Angela and Noah, met with them before the meeting. And thank you to everyone who has submitted an online public comment or is here to make a public comment tonight. The time and dedication, not only the committee, the steering committee, but the public have devoted to this plan is represented in the plan that we'll share this evening. So tonight, we will provide an overview of the planning process before we dive into the plan itself. And then we'll do a high level discussion of the recommendations before we open it up to comments. So the goal for tonight is to review the entire plan and move toward adoption at the village board meeting, which could be as early as later this month. So the creation of this plan has been a group effort at every step of the way, starting first with the planning project team. We have the Village of Homewood, RTA, Muse Community and Design, who Kelsey and I are representing, Civil Tech and Latent Design as our subconsultants. The core of this plan is a partnership between Homewood and RTA. This plan is the result of an application that the village applied for and was granted through RTA's community planning process. And RTA has been involved in the plan every step of the way in every meeting we've had with Angela and Noah, attending engagement events, and facilitating conversations between PACE and Metra with the planning team. We've also worked with two subconsultants, Civil Tech and Latent Design. Civil Tech did the research and the recommendations for the transportation focused recommendations, and Latent Design did the recommendations that you'll see in the invest section of this chapter, of this document, the sample plans. Externally, community involvement for this plan is really the foundation of where all of the recommendations have stemmed from. Over the course of 12 months, we have had 4 engagement events. We were at Gottschalk the Walk, the Fall Fest. We did a pop-up at Goodspeed Cycles, and we joined a Homewood Business Association monthly meeting. There have been 2 focus groups held and 5 steering committee meetings with 11 steering committee members throughout the time of the planning process. Looking in a little bit more detailed at the timeline, we broke up the past 12 months into 4 categories. So it begins with what we call setting the stage, which was early 2023. So the TOD plan was recommended in the 2020 strategic plan the village created, and that is how the plan started. The village and RTA came together and agreed to co-create the plan. We came on board, and then we called the second step listening to locals. So this is where the community steering committee was formed. And this community steering committee, made up of residents and business owners in Homewood, informed the trajectory of the rest of our planning process and where we would conduct engagement. Following that steering committee meeting, engagement began, and we go into the next step, which we call pen to paper. And this is where we were really starting to develop draft recommendations. So engagement continued all through this time. This is November to March, but it got a lot more specific to each recommendation and getting a lot more detailed in what the community wanted to see. And then we have finally the final plan being proposed and where we are now, which is what we call plan completion and implementation. So in this step, since we have completed the final plan, we have met with the service boards, we've met with Metra and PACE and RTA, and all of their comments on the plan have been incorporated. We did a final meeting with the steering committee, received comments from them, and all of the comments have been incorporated. And then we just received comments from fire, police department, village staff, and public works, which we will take with the comments we received this evening from this committee and public comment to incorporate into the plan as well. And with that, I'll pass it to Kelsey and we'll get into the plan itself.
Beautiful, thanks. Thanks, Fiona. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelsey. I've been the project manager on this project. I've had the privilege of working with all of you over the last few months to kind of bring us to this point, which has been very exciting. We've really enjoyed our time working in this community, and we've produced this plan that we're very excited about. And a lot of the structure that kind of where this is all coming from is originally after we had completed a lot of the public engagement that Fiona has just been mentioning. We really sat with all of what we'd been hearing and started thinking about the broader structure of all this. And we arrived at this graphic, which ultimately guides the document that you see in front of you. And so we started from a place of arrive, which is really focusing on the idea of using the new station as a catalyst for thinking about gateways and entries into Homewood. From there, we drilled down a little bit further and started thinking about navigating. So once people are here and within Homewood, what does it look like for people to be walking, biking, that type of thing? And then from there, we got into enjoying. So this is more at a block level. What does it mean to really enjoy Homewood once you're here? And then finally, we started looking at investing. So this idea that's kind of more future oriented, visionary, beyond enjoying what's kind of the future of Homewood. And so this diagram guides the rest of the document. And so I'm going to talk through each of these sections really briefly. I understand we have the 9 o'clock curfew and I want to honor that. So we're going to talk through each of these sections and then I'll open it up for kind of questions and comments. So just to give us a sense of where we're going. But with each of these sections, what we have on the slide to open all of this is direct quotes that we heard from people through public engagement. So again, a lot of these are really informing where the recommendations came from. So these recommendations did not come from nowhere. These were very directly informed by what we heard. And so the focus in Arrive, again, as I mentioned, is this idea of what does it mean to be using the station? What does it mean to be thinking about how people are even getting here? And from there, we got into the first 3 recommendations, which are enhancing the access to downtown, thinking about gateways and viaducts, implementing uniform signage throughout downtown and in the surrounding area, and then upgrading the pedestrian and cyclist experience. From there, we moved into Navigate, which again, we have some quotes here from what we were hearing from everyone during this part of the process. And this was really focused on bicycle and pedestrian access. We heard that over and over again from all kinds of stakeholders that we were working with. And so the focus here is really on networks and wayfinding and thinking about what it is actually like for people to navigate easily and whether they're in a car, not in a car, kind of the future of Homewood from that perspective. And from there, we have the following recommendations, which are to bolster the pedestrian network, to extend the bike network, encourage decorative crosswalks, and update downtown wayfinding system. And then we moved into Enjoy, which again, as I mentioned, is really this like block level understanding, thinking a little bit more specifically about aesthetics, furnishings, the things that kind of at this very human scale make Homewood such an enjoyable place to be. And that was a lot of what we were hearing from people, that they were interested in signage, in branding, in identity, bolstering what's already great about Homewood and kind of concretizing, making that more concrete in how, again, we think about the built environment and some of the recommendations, as well as, of course, supporting businesses. And so because we love enjoying Homewood, this one has so many recommendations, but we had to build a capacity of the Homewood Business Association. So thinking more about what that could look like, cultivating the growth of small businesses, fostering inviting open spaces, improving streetscaping, promoting and expanding public art, refining storefront design guidelines, and finally increasing the efficiency of existing parking. So again, all of these things, there's a lot more detail in this plan, of course, on all of these, but these again are really focused on what do we need to do to make Homewood an even more enjoyable place for the future. And the last category is invest. And again, this is much more kind of future oriented visioning, thinking about opportunity areas. And so from these conversations, we heard different things that people were looking for in Homewood. So for example, like a grocery store, and then even thinking about how to leverage kind of upcoming opportunities to really bolster the downtown even further. So thinking about the future of what Homewood Brewing has the potential to do to downtown and that type of thing. And within this section, this is much more site specific than the rest of the recommendations, which are a little bit more broad. And so these recommendations are to repurpose the Village Hall lot, to reimagine the Savoyas site, to create a corner market to kind of get at that grocery store idea, reimagining 183rd through adaptive reuse, pursuing opportunities at 1750 Ridge Road, and finally celebrating historic preservation and thinking about how to weave all of that into the future of Homewood as well. So we're honoring the history, thinking about, again, the history as it pertains to trains, especially in Homewood, and kind of linking that with this kind of future current moment of thinking about the new train station that's coming and being built. So all of that being said, again, the big goal of why we're here tonight is ultimately to seek commission approval to move this document forward to the village board meeting. Ideally, could be as soon as April 23rd, but we're really here to take comment and hear more about what you're thinking and just open it up to conversation. So from there, that's been a lot of information from us, and we're ready to take your questions and comments. So thank you for your time.
Okay, you want to start with the board or you want to start with the audience?
Either way, that's up, yeah, up to you. You're the chair. So.
Let's hear from the audience first. Is that all right with everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. We're gonna ask, if you have a question, please raise your hand. I'm gonna ask you to stand, state your name and address. And we're gonna have to swear you in, because all testimony is taken under. Okay? Yes, sir.
I have more comments than questions. My name is Jack Rymack. I live at 1736 3rd Street. I also have the honor of charity.
And you also swear you're gonna tell us.
This definitely impacts the Parents Commission, but also as a resident.
Okay,
I read through the plan. It's very thorough. It's one of some great ideas. You guys did a terrific job. I do have a few thoughts though.
we have to swear you in first, sir.
Pardon?
We have to swear you in first.
Okay. I'm just not used to that.
Swear the testimony you're going to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, stop you got. Thank you.
As far as the streetscaping is concerned, one of the things that I brought up on our commission and other places throughout meetings I've been to is the importance of making businesses and making your town look human to attract people. Maintaining the landscape, putting up flowers, cleaning up, just actively cleaning up outside of businesses is extremely important. And I'd like to think that I've been really pushing that with the village more and more together and unify even more, come up with some more ideas, have the businesses and the village clean as much as possible. So I see streetscaping as part of the plan. I think that's extremely important. And I just want to stress that, let's keep on it and really push that part of it. But one of the other things I've noticed, especially being open with Stony Point, which is one place to go. Parking is now their premium. And I know we have parking right out here. I'm just looking out there. I see people. The Labute's lot is usually not full. It's full. There's people parking on the street all over the place. We do have quite a bit of parking at Homewood. I think the problem is there are no signs that lead you there. I think one of the things that we really need to add to this is a plethora of signs throughout the village saying public parking here, public parking there, public parking there. If you go to other towns, like Naperville, I'm just throwing it out there, I see it a lot there. They have signs everywhere directing people to where to park. There's public parking all over the place. You see that in many towns. We really don't have much of that here. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. We have these businesses opening and it's wonderful. That's terrific for home. but we also have people complaining about the lack of parking spaces. And one of the things I try to point out to people is it may not be so much a lack of parking spaces, it's a lack of knowing where they are. And the village, I think, needs to do, a really good job of informing the public, not only with signage, but social media, that there's parking all over the place. Another thing that we might need to do is, there's a lot of private businesses that have parking that they really don't want the public using it when they're closed. Having the village perhaps reach out with some sort of agreement like, if the public can park here after hours, we'll help you with some of the paving costs or maintenance costs or something like that. Coming to some kind of an agreement, I think, is something to consider and might be something to ask. And finally, one of the things I've heard here is 183rd Street. I live on 183rd Street. I've been there for 35 years. I was extremely disappointed to hear that the diet, 183rd Street diet seems to be going away due to lack of funding or whatever it is. Being that I've lived there for so long, I've seen the changes. And the changes, as you know, just driving are dramatic on 183rd Street. Our police department has occasionally stepped up patrols, and I see that, I'm aware of that. But it's not really making that much of a difference. If we don't have something in place like the diet, it's kind of an unusual name, the 183rd Street diet, I fear something seriously bad will happen again on that street. I've seen cars lose control and hit my neighbor's tree, not many years ago. We know what happened in Senate. We can't ignore this. We have to find the fund. The state says, no, we're cutting it off. It's a couple $100,000. Today, the village can probably afford that if we can't get the grant from the state. There have to be other grants for that. We need a grant writer and possibly to help with that. I don't think we have one, right? We need a grant writer. That would help some of the funding, not just for 183rd Street, but also for the new development we got going on. So I know I saw 183rd Street mentioned in the plan. I read the minutes. Believe it or not, people read minutes. I read the minutes. A couple of you guys had, or some of you had mentioned your concern about the 183rd Street diet possibly going away. And it was encouraging to hear that from other entities. So I'm encouraging the village and the commission and the village board not to give up on it. That's extremely important to the safety of our town. So that's all I have to say.
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anybody else? No other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
My name's
State your name and address, please.
Brian Hawkins, 18345 Perth.
And you swear the testimony you're gonna give is gonna be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God. Okay.
So I live just kind of on the other side of the train tracks, right? And often when I come to downtown Homewood, whether it's just for fun or lunch and work or get on the train. And my primary method of transportation is by bike. I don't like to drive my car 3 blocks here, right? But as we talked about, as you've done, is it's been planned that viaducts under the train tracks pretty hard for bikes. And I appreciate seeing that there's some, some attention given to that we're going to put in, propose to put in the bike lane. But I would love to see long-term, I realize it's asking long-term fix, but I'd love to see something more substantial long-term. The painted bike lane offers zero protection to a cyclist. It offers some visibility, which is good, but a lot of studies show that a painted bike lane is kind of a nominal, not to the safety for cyclists and doesn't have much impact. So I don't really have a solution, just that I would love to see something done with that viaduct long term. And even also the mention of Dixie Highway viaduct in here, same thing. So that's less safety to me personally. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Have your name and address, please.
My name is Juan Linder, 17 City.
And you swear the testimony you're gonna give is gonna be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is more of a comment, but I just want to say that I'm very encouraged by the development of this CLP. The recent things like even though that there's still gonna be plenty of long-term issues and still going to be issues with parking, I think that the city will should continue to explore these different. A follow-up comment to that, I think a great way to address some of these issues, especially in regards to parking, is the promotion of some of the existing base routes that go through Lakewood, especially with the new station being built that will have basically bus stopping stations for 359 and the 356 routes, where, especially considering the base routes, they are pretty frequent. For base 356 is a bus basically every 30 minutes till like 9 o'clock, and 359 a little less consistent, but like every 45 minutes. But if you're standing on 183rd near Pops or 183rd near Juasco, you won't have to wait too long for a bus to arrive and take you straight to downtown Homewood. That's definitely something that I think the city should look at to utilize when promoting with people getting in and out of the downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. All right, we'll start with board members. Member Castaneda, would you have any questions or comments?
Sure, just comments. So I met with Angela and Noah to discuss my comments with them last week. Overall, my comments were very positive. There's a couple of areas where I thought the village could maybe set its long-term sites even higher in the bike infrastructure space. I expressed my hope, like you, that the road diet would go through, because I think it would be a great benefit, not just to public safety, but also for a way that people get around without a car sometimes. So I think it's a forward-thinking plan. I thought it was very thoughtful. I think it's going to carry the village forward. I moved to Homewood because I wanted to live somewhere that had that very elusive combination of vibrant and affordable. And Homewood actually fit that bill, which you can't say about a lot of suburbs around here. So I spend a lot of time downtown, Irwin Park, all those usual haunts. My 7-year-old learned how to ride a bike last summer. She's ready to take over the world on her bike. I would like to have a lot of safe ways to get around town with her on those great bike lanes. We have all these great restaurants that are opening and are open now. I'd love a place and a reason to linger downtown after I'm done eating and hang out and, just enjoy the brief but lovely summers that we have in this climate. So, so general, I think that the thriving, vibrant, modern downtown that's well connected to the rest of the village, I think, is what we're after. And it's my opinion that this plan sets us on the way.
Good, thank you. Member Johnson?
Yeah, I'll second what member Castellan just said concerning downtown. I think one of the things that and we've talked about it, and some of the audience has talked about it too, and that is the traffic on 183rd. And my time out here, I think, and I don't know we've done any traffic studies, but 183rd coming from Halstead to Cicero, which doesn't include us for most of it, but for half of it. In the mornings, it's just, the traffic has just doubled in the last 5 years. And so that is a definite concern, whether, I think at one point someone had talked about creating a bike path and maybe cutting down a lane on 183rd. Were you to do that, traffic would be backed up even farther. So I think it is an issue. Cars are driving too fast on 183rd. That's certainly a problem, and safety is an issue, especially the morning commutes. And I'm seeing some of this for the first time because I'm rarely at home in the morning, but I start working from home one day a week and then going out sometimes in the morning and seeing it, and watching it for 4 or 5, seeing what was going on years ago and now, is an issue that, needs to be addressed, and have to continue to look at that. So that's, I think that's the biggest concern. The other thing, you mentioned that you were getting comments from the fire and police department. Can you sort of generally tell us the kinds of things that they're concerned about?
Yeah. I can pull them up, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we've all learned.
We received these this morning. The police department is interested in a reference for who conducted the 2022 asphalt art study. That's on page 31. And that study was conducted by Sam Schwartz.
You're trying to show it, you aren't sharing screen.
Oh,
Oh, we're just
No, we're
reading.
just-
Yeah.
We're just reading.
but that's on page 31, the study they're referencing. And that study was conducted by Sam Schwartz, graphic engineering firm. And they also, their second and final comment was enforcement concerns with parking, which is something we've discussed at length in the planning process. That's specific to the recommendation for metered parking. So they were talking about enforcement concerns there. Those are the 2 comments from the police department. For the fire department, they had one concern, and it was specific to the semi-permanent feature on the Savoyas site, and this could be found on page 39 and 40. And they were wondering if it could become parking or a development site primed for construction instead. So they addressed the need for this to be an additive project to the surrounding area. But so they're not wild about it being located specifically on that site. And that was the only comment from fire.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mr. Johnson?
No, that's it.
Okay, Member O'Brien?
Good evening. My conclusion was the plan is well prepared, organized and detailed. I did meet with staff earlier this week and went over for well over an hour, a number of thoughts and questions. The village should be able to benefit from many of the recommendations and suggestions that you've provided. It's a very good report. My concern is always is public safety and the confluence of problems that are the problematic issue is 183rd and Harwood intersection. It's unique. If you begin to list all of the items that are a question regarding that, I don't know that a diet is going to be of benefit at all. We're talking about a bike box where the normal right turn going west would be located, and that would provide the bicyclists to proceed ahead of the vehicles. The vehicles could still make a right turn. But then immediately when anyone makes that turn, you have an entrance to a small market area. And then about 70 or 80 feet beyond that, you have the turning for Park Avenue. From a visual point of view, the viaduct is recessed when you're approaching it from either direction. For some people, that's a visual problem. The viaduct is different than the viaduct at Dixie. If you're in the viaduct, let's say as a bicyclist, you're trapped. You have a wall on the side of you, and you have a metal fence, an iron fence. You have no way to really quickly get away. On Dixie, you have columns, and you can, if possible, get to a column between, and you have some manner of getting away from whatever the difficulty may be at that time. So the construction of the treatment of what is going to happen with this plan for those two viaducts has to be different. One treatment for one viaduct, another treatment for the other viaduct. It's just public safety. That is the only real problem that I have. I have a myriad of questions with regards to items that will impact that and any of this. The casino, for example, will be opening up later this year, and the hotel probably 6 months later. We don't know what the traffic is going to be. And that has to be experienced along the timeline that other decisions are going to be made with regards to this plan. Because all of the streets are single lane, 175th, Ridge Road, Holbrook, on and on. 183rd is not. So if the diet goes through and it is also reduced to one lane of vehicular traffic, is that going to pose any problem at all? We don't know that as yet. Because the traffic coming from the west going to the casino has to travel through Homewood and adjacent streets, and they're all single lane except 183rd Street. So employing the diet, what would that do? We don't know. It's a question mark. And then the hotel, when the hotel goes in, what impact is that going to have? Hopefully, that will again be an economic engine for the downtown area. People that would be coming in for the weekend and staying for the weekend, enjoying some gambling and entertainment or whatever, would like to see what Homewood is about. Okay, so there's going to be traffic coming from the casino into downtown Homewood. So you have the reverse of the people going to the casino. And if a diet is put in, then you have, again, a single lane. These are questions, they're not negatives. They are questions, items on a list of many that will have to be addressed as we go along. This is a great basis plan, in my estimation. Just going down quickly. What you've addressed and who you've contacted and who has to be followed up with are the Homewood Business Association, the Homewood Historical Society, IDOT, Metra, RTA, the Village of Homewood, the Village of Homewood Department of Public Works, and the Village of Homewood Department of Economic Development. And then you have reconstruction to the viaducts, which obviously anyone knows is years out when that begins to be structured. So this is a good basis plan, in my estimation, but who is going to do the timeline as we step into this? Zeno's paradox. You know, you take that first step, and then where's the second and the third, and we have to plot it out. Who is going to do that?
Yeah.
Is that the consultant going to do that?
It's
Is that in concert with other individuals? Is it in concert with the Department of Economic Development?
Yeah, so you bring up a lot of really good points. And again, and you're kind of touching on this, like the point of this document is really to set that baseline. And then that's ultimately going to be up to the village. And a lot of some of what you're talking about is much more granular detail that's going to get worked out kind of beyond this adoption. So this is really, I think about it as kind of like setting a roadmap, pun intended, but setting a roadmap for kind of where do you want to go, and then working out those details kind of as you all collectively move forward. So it isn't necessarily like us as consultants setting, you know, a timeline for you on what you need to do when at a certain time, and that's ultimately going to be up to village staff. But I don't know if you have any more to add to that.
That's exactly right.
A trailing thought, we're doing this. This is Homewood. Homewood moves forward. Somebody traveling from another, even surrounding suburb, they don't have this. So they come into town. And all of a sudden, oh, you have all of these green boxes and you have this other marking and so forth. How do you feel about that kind of, how do we awaken the people coming into Homewood to that. Nobody else around has it.
Yeah.
This is not, I don't want it to be a rude awakening. I just want it to be an awakening.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bring up a great point, which, education is a huge element of any specifically bike treatments, inside the lane. One recommendation we point out, which can be found, I can pull up the page number if people would like it, but in the bike recommendations, we talk about how many cities do this, Get Behind It campaign for bike boxes specifically. And the first time I saw this was in Madison, Wisconsin, where I was driving actually, and there was this Get Behind It sign right in front of the bike box. I'm familiar with bike boxes, but people I was with were not familiar. And it's a very simple campaign that has a graphic of the bike box, where the car is stopped, and then what the bike box is for. So it's just showing a bicyclist inside the box. So that's one very easy, relatively cheap to implement way to very quickly educate people, that also follows roadway guidelines of what signs can be installed to not distract drivers. Page 30. And so this type of education can go hand in hand with bike infrastructure. But also the beauty of the recommendations that we're recommending is that very soon, very quickly, they will be in other surrounding suburbs. We're already seeing them in Chicago and expanding out to first ring suburbs. And so pretty quickly, this type of lane treatments will be commonplace as it gives the bicyclists a head start, and it makes it safer, especially for lanes that Homewood has the control over, but it might be intersecting with roads where Homewood does not have jurisdiction. So then it gives the bicyclists a little bit of peace of mind and a little bit of head start to get through that intersection that maybe Homewood wouldn't be able to address themselves.
Is there any merit in the police department for a temporary period of time? Making note of occurrences that are part of the changes. So that also, if there are occurrences, changes could be made. I don't know what the occurrences might be, but if people are unfamiliar and as they learn what they could be. I'm just concerned about public safety.
Occurrences as in like cars being inside the bike box.
Anything.
Yeah. It's typically, and in the industry, it isn't required. It is a relatively, like, once you figure it out once, then you understand what it's for. Also, it uses already existing, treatment identifiers, like the large white stop line.
Well, you're identifying violations. I'm taking it a
Okay.
step further in my thinking. There's actually some injury.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That should be documented, as with any bike to,
Well, obviously they do injury now, but I mean injury specifically related to the changes here, so that could be incorporated.
yeah, I think that they should be noted, definitely. So you're saying, is your question around, like additional, like surveillance of the intersection if changes are put in?
Take the 183rd Street Harwood right turn in a box in front. Nobody has that now. They're unfamiliar with what needs to be done there. And hopefully they'll learn from the signage that you described. But if things occur there, what things are occurring there, and how can we adjust the plan to take care of that in the future?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would also add that when we think about all of these things, like none of these will necessarily be occurring in isolation. So when we think about, certainly the village can be doing social media campaigns, can be doing, in the same way we partnered with Good Street Cycles, to be able to do outreach for this project. Like there's ways that this can still be communicated, and there's like an education component that would ideally happen with all of this. And it wouldn't necessarily be like any of this is being, dropped out of the sky without that being communicated, that those changes are coming, and that those changes are being put into place. So that's, another important piece of all this too.
I don't have any other questions with this one.
Member Cap?
Good evening. So I too commend you for the organization of this plan. I found it kind of interesting that you have these, you call them matrix, the matrices, the certain decisions. I mean, it's a good organization, but curious how we got here is, maybe this is a gentleman from the RTA might offer some insight here. How have you been working on any other TOBs for other communities, or is that your specialty? To be honest, I'm a little unfamiliar with your firm, but are you working on or have worked on similar plans like this for communities with commuter rail?
Yeah, so this is actually our first TOD, which has been why it's been so exciting and we've enjoyed it a lot, but we've actually partnered with Alex from RTA on a number of other projects, so we have an existing relationship. But I guess in terms of your question, are you interested in hearing more about like how Homewood specifically got to like the TOD? Like the.
No, I understand
Okay.
certainly the reason discussing this, but I'm just curious how this particular might differ from what the RTA might encourage in other communities. I mean, the essence of a transit-oriented development is usually a commuter rail station in central business district of a community, but Lord knows across this region, there's a considerable variation with how the downtowns look and size of the station and the ridership and blah, 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 blah. So I'm really curious how this has been tailored to be unique to Homewood.
Yeah. I'm happy to speak a little bit to that, but I'll have maybe Alex, if you want to jump in first and then we can jump in after you.
Yeah, so this plan was funded through RTA's community planning program, as Fiona had mentioned at the beginning, which is a grant program that we manage that provides funding and technical assistance for plans like these throughout the region. So anybody that has metro service or pay service, CTA, bus or rail service, those municipalities are eligible to apply to our organization for funding and technical assistance, like doing the procurement of firms like Kelsey and Fiona's. And we do work on a number of different transit-oriented development plans throughout the region. Even just on the Metro Electric line, I'm managing one TOD plan in Richmond Park. We recently completed one in University Park. We've also done one in Harvey, and that's just along this line. So we do them throughout the region. And I think one way that this plan is different from some of those other ones in other communities is, I think, Homewood has the great benefit of having a lot of interest in investment already, which a lot of the other communities that I just mentioned struggle to get that type of investment and interest in building new buildings. And I think one of the ways that we kind of tailored this plan to Homewood specifically is things like maximizing existing parking, trying to look at specific sites that have been vacant for a long time, and try and recommend new land uses that expand the available destinations that people can access within the downtown. So I think probably those are the biggest ones, just that a lot of the other South suburb communities have been really struggling to get the type of investment and interest in building here that Homewood has. So I think it's a great benefit of the community. And that's one way, yeah, that we kind of tailored the plan to Homewood specifically.
Okay, so I'm glad that you addressed it that way, but to maybe make this more general, is there with this type of program, this funding program, is there a certain framework, checklist of a way of organizing things that is suggested, required to ensure that you're thoroughly examining the situation? Can you speak to that? It's probably less RTA, but more the dynamic duo.
Yeah, I think from the RTA perspective, our goals for these types of plans are largely guided by our strategic plan, which is called Transit is the Answer. I think one of the major action items in that strategic plan that we try and operationalize through these plans, these more specific plans, is enabling communities, I forget the exact wording, but enabling communities to expand the mix of uses around their transit station to attract a greater diversity of land uses and destinations within the transit served areas. So more broadly, we try and encourage, a mix of land uses close to transit. We try and encourage recommendations that make it easier and more comfortable for people to walk and bike to and from the station to access not only, the destinations along the transit system, but also within the villages and municipalities that we work in. So I think that's probably how I would answer that in a more broad way.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I feel like Alex really covered most of what I was gonna say, but again, RTA and Village of Homewood, we have all been in strategic partnership, moving all of this forward the entire time. And so, we've certainly been taking our cue from RTA and understanding kind of like from a regional level, what they're thinking about and expecting and bringing that into the process and how we've been doing all of this work for Homewood, so.
But again, I'm just curious, so there was a checklist of things that need to be addressed, and is that applicable to all of the stations?
Not necessarily a checklist that we go off for each individual project. To a large degree, we look to the villages that we're working with to provide us with their goals. So one of the things that that was appealing about Homewood's application is that it builds on the comprehensive plan, and that village staff wanted to develop a plan that looks at mixing uses, making it easier for people to bike and walk to transit. So those are the types of things that we generally look for, but it's not a specific checklist that we apply to every project. But those are common threads that we see and things that we look for when deciding which projects to choose. Because we get, this year we got over 20 applications for our community planning program. We typically only fund like 8 to 10 in any given program year. So we don't accept everybody. And Homewood's application was appealing because their goals aligned with our broader goals about encouraging ridership at the station through mixing of land uses, making it easier to walk and bike to the station.
Thank you.
And again, from our end, I would echo that we don't come in as consultants with a checklist and how we do this work. We don't do cookie cutter plans. We're very much here to support the village, and Angela and Noah have been really excellent in helping guide us as the consultants and, digging into all this material about really setting a vision and goals about where they wanted to go. And we're really here to just support that. So it's certainly not us coming in with a checklist saying, this is exactly what has to happen. So we're really here to just help facilitate all of putting this together. So.
Thank you. I'm curious, you encourage, you have two things about bicycle safety in the sense of crosswalks. That's maybe a better way of talking about it. And so we have crosswalks for pedestrian safety. We have the crosswalks with the bike boxes for the cyclist safety, and then you are encouraging these decorative crosswalks. Now, this is a clarifying question.
Sure.
So I'm presuming that you're not going to try to impose a decorative crosswalk at other, let's say, high hazardous locations for pedestrians and or bicyclists.
Yeah, so nothing about when we talk about the kind of creative, the artistic crosswalks in that way, it's not necessarily about imposing anything. So that's just kind of a suggestion of where some of those, could be located. And actually the reason we were suggesting that, and we used City of Milwaukee as an example, they have a really fantastic program where actually community members can kind of designate where that they would like, those installations to take place. And we've actually found, and I think that was what the police reference was to earlier of information that they were looking at, but we found that those crosswalks, the decorative crosswalks, can actually reduce a lot of, there's like a safety benefit to them.
Paint the
Why is that?
I'm sorry.
Why is that? I mean, how does it make it more safe?
Yeah, You
Yeah.
wanna go?
It brings awareness that there is a crosswalk there. So a lot of crosswalks, when they simply have the two bars, the horizontal bars. They're very easy to just treat as any other street. And so when you bring something onto the street, what it does naturally to drivers is it slows their speed if there's something in the road that doesn't look like pavement. And it brings attention to something that's there. So in this case, it would bring attention to this is a zone for somebody that isn't a car. And so it brings the driver's eye, and thus decreases speed, increases visibility.
So this Sam Schwartz, he's the one who did the study on.
Yes.
Yeah, Sam Schwartz is a
Pavement.
big, yeah, it's a transportation firm. So they're a firm that did a study and kind of report on all of that.
That's what I was curious. You have about the parking, I gotta make sure I'm on the right page of that, but you refer to consolidation zones with respect to the parking. I mean, I could sort of follow how, it was sort of corralling certain areas, but could you talk about that, what your intentions were, what you mean with that, how you envision, because I think you were talking about making the parking more efficient, so how you envision that in these zones, but let's start with the consolidation zone or area, or whatever.
Sure. So for the consolidation zone, that is looking specifically at private parking lots. And so right now, what Homewood has is a lot of private parking lots that allow parking for their business only. And so having these consolidation zones can help the areas where you maybe have two parking lots butting up against each other. And one is for one business and one is for the other business. And then if you walk outside the business, you enjoyed your time there, you walk outside, you want to keep lingering around downtown, but your car is parked in a private lot that's only serving one business. So this is a way that we can have zones created. So how we created the zones is we picked major destinations in downtown and did a 5-minute walking radius from each. So for example, Homewood Brewing Company is one, and we created a zone there. So then the village can take that zone and then go to businesses that own private parking lots and work on shared use agreements, which already lives in the village's code. That businesses can go into shared use agreements with other businesses, thus allowing other business resident or other business, folks using their business to park in parking lots that may not be only solely theirs. So a lot of times this happens when outside of business hours, if when a business closed, they allow other people to park there as well.
Okay, so that
I think it was
answers
good
that.
speed in that sense.
Well,
Yeah.
of course, but yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But is there I mean, I get the idea of private lots that might be underutilized at certain times of day, blah, but is there a minimum threshold size of the parking lot that you're looking at, or?
For this area, since the area is so small, there isn't a minimum size for the parking lots. Just expanding the use for them, even if it is a couple spaces. Since parking is such a hot ticket item, and as more businesses come in, any flexibility would be appreciated.
Now, as part of this plan, this is perhaps more for the staff. I think the gentleman from the Appearance Commission talked about Naperville. I use that as an example only because how many public lots are there in the downtown Naperville? 3, maybe 4. My question or my speculation here is, are we looking to when we're so wildly successful, are we aiming to maybe try to augment our public offering of parking? It didn't seem like it was addressed here at all, and it strikes me that maybe it should be.
In what way? Are you?
Well,
Specific?
For instance, these consolidation zones are looking to accomplish designated parking throughout the central business district with private property. However, there are a few locations where parking is publicly owned. And I'm just asking if, is there some sort of contingency plan when we are wildly successful? We just can't get there without contemplating whether or not we need to address the need for more parking.
I think, I don't know if you're talking about a parking garage or something along those lines.
No, it could take all sorts of forms.
The issue with, okay, so yes, we are always looking at the possibility of sharing parking, of occupying, taking over parking lots from private businesses that are not using them. There are several parking lots on Dixie behind those buildings that are underutilized. So with the underutilized parking, we definitely look at whether we can have agreements where the public shares them or whether the village could take them over as public parking lots. We are definitely doing that. It varies, by ownership, whether the private owner is willing to do that and work with us. But definitely part of our plan. No, as far as like the parking garage, that's a cost issue.
Well, of course, and I'm not, I mean, that gets into more of a specific. And it's also a big ticket item.
I mean, could you say, South Suburban Mass Transit District as a very good example. We recently acquired that
Right.
parking lot. So we're constantly looking for ways to increase our public parking. And that's a perfect example, of one of the lots we were able to acquire.
And that's by that, just for clarification,
That's the metro parking lots.
the west side of the train, just north of them.
That is on both sides. That is directly west of us, that long
Right.
strip of parking,
Here.
and then there's also a parking lot on the west. Both of those are now owned by the village.
Right.
Mhm. And that increased our parking downtown by quite a bit.
Okay, so keep up the good work.
Thank you.
No more questions.
Okay, member Branch.
Sure. I did not come in to discuss any questions or comments with the village staff as I was on the TOD committee from day one. So I had plenty of opportunity to ask questions and voice opinions, which I did. So it's nice to see the plan come to a final culmination. I think the one thing that's missing here though, which I don't know, maybe it's forthcoming, is good education, especially for the public, as to what the next steps are. Typically in an implementation of a plan like this, you have to realize that what we're here to approve is really just a big menu. And it's gonna be up to the village to look at the menu and make some menu choices. And you're gonna cut it up. Some of these things are gonna be feasible, some of them are not, i.e. the 183rd road diet. Some of the other smaller items are gonna be priorities and some of them are less priorities. Some of them are gonna be able to have funding easily available and some of them are gonna take a little bit of convincing with public and private mixture of funding to get them across the finish line. So I think one thing that the village needs to consider is the public has a lot of interest in this and everybody's got their own parts of the menu that they want to see could move forward. So I think what we need to do is make sure that the public understands when and where their voice can be made to champion their little pet projects and what their interests are to get these things moved across the finish line. Even so far as even helping the village campaign for funding, get that public and that P3 funding going. If business owners and other institutions aren't hearing from the public that the public wants this, then their interest is going to be low. So it really needs to be a partnership between the village and the public to get these things to happen. We approve this plan, it doesn't move as one entity across the finish line. It's going to take years of picking and choosing. Think of it as like similar to the 5-year plan. And not all of it's gonna get implemented. So that's one thing that I thought was kind of important to make sure that we bring to the conversation. Other than that, I think obviously parking, you're gonna need to educate the public, whatever gets implemented there. So they know it's there. The gentleman made a comment about parking signs. I think it's on page 32. Highlights the use of more signage for parking. But again, in addition to that, the more that we can get that discussion out in front of the public, the more successful that effort will be. And then, one other little point too is, we're talking about using the parking app for several of the main road districts here, and if you've, ever parked downtown using that app, it actually works pretty slick. And it's affordable because you can pick the minimum time frame, and usually you can park somewhere if you are gonna be in and out for just a couple bucks. And usually that's not too bad. So I know that even when I heard it at first, it was a couple of meetings ago for the steering committee, I was kind of like, what? Paid parking downtown Homewood? Are you crazy? You're gonna deter business. And the more I thought about it, and the more I related it to my own experiences in different areas of the city, I was like, yeah, it works pretty slick. So actually it might more be to the plus side. But then I'm thinking about grandmas and grandpas, my mother-in-law, who are not savvy with iPhones and whatnot. And how do we implement parking for seniors that may not be savvy in using that app? So that's an issue, and I'm sure other communities have had to address that. Because we are the suburbs, and it is easy for seniors that are still driving to get around, and that is a main activity to maintain their independence. It's important that we aren't shutting them out.
I'll learn.
Well, I'll teach you. So that's just something to bring forward to consider. And again, that's like an implementation issue that we want to make sure that we incorporate. So I don't know, Angela, if you can, if you're the appropriate person to speak to just the immediate, what are the next steps after this plan leaves here tonight? It goes to the village. How does the village digest it? Did they adopt it? Then what starts the ball rolling to implement it? Is it the public stays tuned for your next scheduled board meeting, or does it come back to the planning commission meeting as these different menu items come up for, are we gonna do this one? Or are we gonna maintain a steering committee type body that will help implement the plan as it goes through that phase?
Those are very good questions. I think generally when we have a plan, it's just up to staff to start check marking things, but it would be much better if we did have a public process and maybe a committee that continues to meet and focus groups that continue to meet out of this to guide it. And, the public has been involved in this and at least aware of it. And I think to continue that process would be great. From staff's perspective, we are starting with parking signs. We've already got a plan in place for developing parking signs to make our parking lots more visible. We're looking at other ways to educate the public on parking, but definitely I think that that's a very, very valid question and something that we do need to make sure we continue as far as educating the public on this and keeping it alive and not putting it on a shelf somewhere and forgetting about it.
So
It's not something that you need to bring before. But so.
Usually not.
It might be.
Some of it might be, but a lot of the implementation would go to the village board for definitely.
Right.
Okay.
Member Alfonso.
Thank you. Well, I just have to compliment you guys, you and all the committee members on a really greatly developed plan. And I like the way it's organized, the thoughtful way of kind of setting up, arriving all the way through investing in Homewood. I think, again, information like parking, also maybe a little more information on the bus routes and what they're doing, because you could avoid a lot of the parking issues if you could take a bus somewhere. And also some knowledge of maybe you can put your bike on the bus, so you don't have to, the bus will take you through the viaducts and where you're gonna go, so, I think maybe we could utilize a little more of the public transit that way, and maybe just by putting look, my phone is just dinging too much, I'm sorry. But in general, I think a lot of great ideas, and I look forward to helping implement this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a great plan. I think there's a lot of thought that was put into it. There's a lot of great ideas in here. Someone mentioned signage. Downtown Homewood is definitely lacking signage. People don't know there's a little parking lot on Martin Avenue. What is it, Martin and Hickory, I think. There's probably, I think there's one little sign somewhere. But people don't know where it's at. People don't know there's a lot on Harwood Avenue and Corona. There's one little sign out in front, and I think it says 3-hour parking. There's definitely a lack of parking in downtown Homewood. We just had a restaurant open, Stony Point. It's a great restaurant, you know, we're encouraging it. They've been busy, thankfully. People's biggest complaint is there's no place to park. The only place to park for that restaurant, I think they have 4 places out in front on Ridge Road. And I think they have 4 around the corner. And that's it. Otherwise, parking, you know, for there, you're on your own to try and find it. The other thing that's lacking, especially on that corner, there's not a handicap parking place to be found anywhere. You know, I know they don't normally put them on, you know, streets, but I think some consideration on Martin Avenue, you've got to have a handicap parking place either by the restaurant. You also have another restaurant that just opened, Bergstein's, the deli. You know, there's on-street parking there. It's not enough. Again, there's no handicap parking. That's something, is that something that's been considered?
That is something that we were just talking about and that we are definitely going to implement. 2, possibly, probably, hopefully 2 handicap parking spaces on Martin, 1 in front of, 1 near Stony Point and 1 near Bergstein's, because we do recognize that that is an issue and it's needed.
Yeah, because
And
you've
that
got
is- that's
Bergstein, you've
Village
got the
Road.
gift shop
Yeah.
down there, you know, the
Yes.
taco place. What was my other thought? Signage is definitely needed. Okay. You mentioned the parking lot on Harwood. That's only available after 5 o'clock. And right now you basically can't use it. You can use a few spots. Well, there's a lot of construction stuff in there right now. But do people know that you can park there free after 5 o'clock? No.
Right.
You know, one thing you, Chairman, you're bringing up, we're talking about the importance of signage. One thing that ought to be encouraged is businesses themselves should have signage telling their patrons where they might park, and so possibly placing some emphasis on that,
Right.
Yeah.
but didn't mean to cut you off.
Not
That would be a key feature of the consolidated zones.
Yeah.
You would put a zone parking sign in each one of those establishments, so people would know when they come in.
And we're already looking at some of those ideas as well. You know, Angela mentioned the ADA signage, the RFP for the parking signage is active right now. We're collecting proposals on that already. So that's coming down the pipeline, and some of those other ideas, the parking zone signage, things like that. Are ideas we're already in conversations about. They're really important to us, and it's kind of all part of one implementation item in this plan, which is about that kind of parking signage and figuring out how we better manage the supply we already have. So I just wanted to chime in and say that these are, a lot of the ideas being mentioned. The village is already starting to collect information about how we can get it done.
No, my point was not so much what the village is doing, that's fine,
Oh,
but
yeah.
encouraging private businesses. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer.
The Harwood Avenue right now. They've got a fence, there's normally parking available on Harwood Avenue on the west side of the street. Right now, they have the fence up there. But do people know that you could still park there? No. They see the fence and they see the signs from the fence company, but nowhere is a sign that says 3-hour parking or whatever it was. You could put up some temporary signs for right now. Yeah, it would be tough. If you have a passenger in the passenger seat, you might have to stay out from the curb a little bit, but that whole strip is just sitting there empty during the day. Where all these people could be parking. And again, signage. There is no signage anywhere. The other place you could put a nice parking lot, it's right here. Got a nice village parking lot right here. I know the village doesn't want to spend the money. You put one deck on there. You'd have, we're trying to encourage people, businesses to come to the downtown area. You're getting the businesses, but you're not getting a place for their patrons to park. Somebody mentioned Naperville. Naperville's got a great parking area. And I believe it's free. Mr. Bransky mentioned something about parking meters. That's the worst thing you could do in downtown Homewood is put in parking meters. You'll kill off all your parking, all your patrons. We're also gonna have a brewery opening on Dixie pretty soon. They have ample parking, but it's in the back of their building. But it's up to them to put up ample signs so their patrons know where they can park. You also have parking on Dixie Highway, which is great. You've got an empty lot sitting where Savoyas used to be. That'd be a great spot for a little parking lot. I know the village is trying to buy the church parking lot. And that's not going too well, I don't think. The other thing that's sitting basically downtown Homewood is Independence Park. The mushroom we call it. You ever see anybody in there? No. Either that would, I know that belongs to the Park District. Would they be willing to give it to the village?
That belongs to the village, actually.
Oh, it does? Oh, okay, so never
That's the
mind.
one part that does.
There's, nobody's using it. You've got that mushroom that just sits there and does nothing. You could put a nice little parking lot there. That and Savoyas, the old Savoyas, would be a nice little parking lot. You could take the little park, Independence Park, I think is the name of it.
Yeah.
You could put some flowers and stuff around and make it look real nice, but you could also get parking in there.
The plan mentions 8 public parking lots. Do they incorporate them in the one Sharon's talked about? So we do have 8.
Yeah, it also incorporates the parking lots, to south of Blueberry Hill. That's a public parking lot as well.
Oh, yeah.
Where is that?
Something Blueberry Hill. South of 180.
Oh, okay.
On Hart.
Yeah, but people aren't gonna park there and walk.
No, but
To
they
your-
can walk to the businesses on that end of the town, which is
The
why
license.
the map with the different districts is important.
You know, then the other problem is in the summertime, basically in the nice weather. The you know, it's great, we have all these different activities. But they block off Martin Avenue. For different activities. So there goes all of your parking on Martin Avenue. I know we've got the little area up by, right across from the hotel. And then they use this back part also. If something could be worked out with the hotel. Instead of having. You know, either or, either have the activities on the street here like we have. But open up the hotel parking for people that are coming to these events. You know, that way you've got, your people are right here, your parking's here. Instead of them trying to find a place. Just a couple thoughts. Otherwise, I think, you know, it's a great plan, it's gonna take a lot of work. It's gonna take a lot of work to get the public to know all the different changes that are being made. Okay, all I got to say, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else in the audience have any other questions? Nope, okay.
I just have a quick comment.
Lori Tozen, Meadowsix Gardner Road, I'm lost more by business. Just let's consider the residents as well in downtown Homewood who don't necessarily have ample parking. You know, one young woman who is a local teacher who will not leave her car, won't leave in her car on Fridays and Saturdays because when she returns home, she would have to park blocks away. It doesn't say to do that. So there isn't enough parking.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you.
That's another.
Yes, sir.
Related to that matter too. I think it's also that it's also that walking traffic. So this is years ago, but Austin was a great example where a lot of their patrons, especially after the school comes out, are just kids walking from HF or Parker and using St. Luke's or going to Stony Points or Bernstein's. A lot of their patrons when they just open up, but just people walking out the offices or the businesses or even the apartment around the stores themselves. So there's one hand, yes, the parking issue, but also we want to make sure that we still have that walking traffic because for some businesses in Homewood, one of the downsides are that they don't get that walking traffic and that can cause other issues. I'm thinking of small cakes on Halsted, great little bakery. Unless you are going there, you wouldn't even know it exists because small strip mall on the side of Halsted, or even Uncle John's Barbecue, which just, I think today or last week, I will award from the New York Times for being one of the top 10. Not top 10, top 100 restaurants.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's in a gas station too.
It's in a gas station.
That's amazing.
So it is a good thing because
Sure.
And it's
small case in theory has plenty of parking. It has that entire Jewel Oscar's parking lot that someone can go to a Home Depot parking lot. But they sometimes still struggle with patronage because, again, there is no walking traffic. So I think one benefit of, especially the businesses in downtown Homewood, and why so many businesses are interested is you can get more than 100 people just walking in front of their business on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
See, I think I have one more just quickly, and this might be addressed to you guys. I think remember what Ryan was talking about the 183rd Street diet going all the way to Harwood, but doesn't it end at Dixie?
Into Dixie
And then it's back to 2 lanes, right? Okay.
as proposed, but
From Dixie to Harwood.
But the TOD plan is looking at the potential if it were expanded between Dixie and Harwood, so that was one of the questions and one of the considerations. Right, that's,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I can just coattail the young man's comment about walking. So that's kind of the double-edged sword of this TOD plan. The whole purpose of doing this is to be transit oriented, specifically meaning the Metro train. So the whole idea is to draw opposite traffic. We want people who don't, who've been everywhere, done everything in the city and want to come out and get some fresh air in the burbs, have the ability to ride Metro out here and have something to do. The casino is going to draw them out. Some of our restaurants, obviously our new world famous barbecue place. So the whole idea is that if you don't have a car living in the city, how do you get out here and do all those things? But that at times is in direct odds with, we all live in the suburbs. We don't do anything without our car. So how do you satisfy both without screwing one or the other over? That's the tricky part of how you do this. So you have to keep that in mind as you look at some of these things and how they're going to get implemented. You might have a positive towards the transit side, but it might be a negative to the suburbanite side. You have to kind of find the middle ground in some of those things. That's the point.
Well, you can take the train out here and then we'll have a trolley after
Well,
you're done walking in downtown.
If you're looking
Homewood.
for something to do, a
You know,
trolley from
take a
all the
trolley
various parking lots that
to
you cited might not be a bad thing.
Yeah.
You could drive around all day. And we'll set you up with some pre-barbecue.
Yes,
Yo, board, 66 months ago, yes, I swear.
thank you.
And just as an example, I live in the old part of Homewood, I live on Cedar, close to Ashland. I walked here tonight. So I also ride my bicycle. I don't know how many of you ride your bicycle in Homewood. One person, 2, okay. So, I mean, there you go, 2.5.
I'm being honest, yeah, it's,
And
I want it to be a program.
You know what the challenges are? I definitely will know that Mr. Crump rides his bicycle, because he rides his bicycle everywhere, applause for that. So it's like, I was listening to some of these comments and questions, about the bike box. And I have the benefit that I was raised in a bike crazy country in the Netherlands. And one of the cities, and I think you also remember this, it's a provincial town in the northern part of the Netherlands that won an award years ago for most bicycle friendly, because they were the first to introduce that. And what they did is very simple. They just painted the asphalt a different color. So when you're worried about a safety line, a white line, but all of a sudden you see red asphalt or red concrete, and it's a huge area, and people know, oh, that's where the bikes are. Even when there's no bikes there, people stop. And then when the light changes, all the bikes go, and then the cars go. So it is possible, but it's a mindset. I think we have to have a mindset, we need to walk more, we need to bike more. And I take the train, I just took the train today. And now I cannot walk from my house to Calumet. It's too dangerous.
That's a hike.
So, unfortunately, my husband getting a ride, but there's no, if it was safe for me to walk, but it's not. And I think that if we start thinking about this and start implementing this, you're gonna get more people walking. And like quite a few of you were talking about safety issues. I live on Cedar and I live relatively close to the Calumet station. If I could just be going under a tunnel, because in the Netherlands, they would have a bicycle tunnel. So I could just ride my bike, park it, get on the train. But of course, that's a wild dream. But I think overall, this plan, countless hours and thoughts and input from community members, make this a really good plan. And if it's the first step, it's a good step.
Yep.
You know, and then we need to take more steps. But, and I also know, I've talked to a lot of people who are concerned about parking. But I think if we could get the parking a little bit out of our mind and put the walking and the bicycling and the bus and public transportation a little bit more, I think then we're gonna get there sooner than we think. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you.
And
Mr.
thank-
Chairman, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
For staff, the end of the fiscal year is the end of this month, is that correct?
It is.
Okay, so in the next fiscal year, starting May 1, is there anything that is a part of this plan to be implemented? Or do we have to wait another year until funds are available to begin the implementation of this plan?
Good question. The one thing we do have are parking signs.
Yeah.
Those are in that plan. And it will be part, as Noah said, we're in the middle of working on that. As far as the other, some of the other things, not particularly, not directly. You know, some of this requires steps, you know, applying for grants, and the plan makes it easier to apply for grants.
No, I
We have the-
referred to that earlier. This is
Yeah,
the,
definitely,
you know.
but yeah, nothing more.
okay. Fiona, in your experience with different projects, have you run into lifts for parking? And if so, where and how were they used?
Are you referencing parking garages where the cars are
Yes,
lifted up?
not garages, lifts. It could be on the ground in a
And then
parking space.
They make a second.
And
level.
most of them are too high, some rarely are 3 high, but most are too high. So you could
Yeah,
obviously take use of the vertical space and dramatically increase the parking. They are in Chicago, they've been used for decades in Chicago.
mhm. That's true, and actually, we talked about your comment that you gave to Angela and Noah, and Angela referenced that, it's something that the village has thought of. Personally, with the work we have done, it's not something we have recommended, since it is such a specific recommendation. But it is used widely in Chicago, and in the Netherlands, they actually use it for bike parking. They have so many bikes,
Mhm.
so they put the bikes.
I think it was last year, there was a discussion that we had, and it was like 25,000 a space if a public parking garage were to be constructed. And the lifts are obviously less than that. But I mentioned to Angela and Noah a rhetorical question. Maybe we should have that in, because let's say for sake of discussion that the brewery
Mhm.
decides to put in some lifts to increase their parking.
Mhm.
We don't have anything that treats that question in the zoning code, the new zoning code.
Yeah.
So this particular plan has stimulated for me several questions
Mhm.
that are not in the current new zoning code.
Yeah. And lifts are also often used by valet services, so parking garages or lots that are almost entirely controlled by valets. So that's another thing to consider, but that's something we can discuss though. Yeah.
If an operation like the brewery, they would be in control of it.
Mhm.
It would be theirs.
Yeah.
I don't have any other
Okay.
questions.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? Nobody else in the audience have any questions or comments? No? All right. I'll move to adjourn the meeting then.
Make a motion.
We need a recommendation to the village board to adopt the plan.
We have to.
We have to recommend, the village board has to adopt this plan, so we would need a recommendation from planning.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend approval of the proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan as the downtown transit oriented development TOD master plan and incorporate the findings of fact into the record.
We have a motion. And we have a second by member Branson.
Right. Roll call, member Alfonso,
Yes.
member Bransky,
Yes.
Member Cap,
Yes.
Member O'Brien,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes.
Member Castaneda,
Yes.
Chairman Zerzaga.
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Now
you
we'll
so much.
entertain the motion to adjourn. Unless you have any other questions or comments?
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Aye.
Pass the day
Second. Person.
Yes.
first.
Who is that?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your work on the.
So Mike, isn't there a vehicle, once, so the plan is subdivided? And let's just say that they, develop changes in planning building.
I'm gonna see who is on here.
Just
Just Elisa, just Elisa.
Tools and methodologies and post approval.